Okay, once you have your whole page set up and you have all your value scales, the next thing that we're going to do is use the pastels. So today what we're going to use are the chalk pastels. So what I really like about these is the colors come out really vibrant and they blend really well together. But the downside to these is that they make a really big mess. So what is going to happen at the end of class is you are going to be asked, or you're going to be given more time to clean up. And what that means is your pastel container should look the exact same as mine when you're done. So you need to make sure that you're putting all the pieces back in order. If they break on you, then make sure that you're putting them back. You're keeping all the yellows together, all the peaches together. So your palette should look like this in the end. The other thing, as far as the mess that they make, is when you're shading, they're going to leave behind a lot of dust. So what I don't want you to do is blow the dust across to your classmates because it's going to get on their paper. It's also going to get on the still life objects. So what you're going to do, and I'll show you in a minute my example, when you're working, every so often you're just going to take your paper and you're going to tap it off to the side like that. And what's going to happen is throughout the class you're going to have a little pile of this pastel dust that at the very end of class you're going to get a wet paper towel and you will wipe it down. So I'll explain that and show you kind of what that's going to look like. So we talked about monochromatic, meaning one color. So you're going to pick any color out of the tray that you want, and then you're also going to choose a white and a black. So depending on how many colors or what colors you have in your palette, you might have to share with another classmate if you don't have a white or a black. So if they're working on this top one, then you can work on some of these bottom too. But I'll explain them all and then you guys can work. So for monochromatic, I am going to pick this red-orange color because I think this is a really nice one. So what's going to happen here? I have value scales, or I have pastel values in parentheses, because you're not going to do a traditional dark to light value scale like we usually do. What we want is try and do something a little bit more fun. So think about however you want to arrange or however you want to build this value scale, kind of like when we did the stippling and the cross hatching, you were able to be a little more creative. I want you to fill the whole box, but as long as you're going dark to light and you get all of those values in, you can fill this box however you want. So I'm going to start out by using this red. And I'm going to lay this down. And I like to be very organic, so however you want to start, I'm just going to do sort of a swirl across the page for right now. Okay. So that's what I'm going to start with. Now, what I think I might do, let's bring this all the way over. Pastels are really nice because you can layer them. So don't worry about using too much of these pastels all at once or putting too much down all at once. You're just going to be able to layer them. So I'm going to ask that you don't use your finger to blend with these, even though we might be doing it in the past. But I want us to kind of get out of that habit. As long as you are layering them and going back on top of each other, you don't need to use your finger. You can actually use the pastels themselves to blend. So notice how I had this nice sort of wave going on right here, and then all I did was just take the white and go right over top of it. And that created this sort of lighter kind of coral color. And now I'm going to take the white and I'm just going to shade in some of that more empty space. So what you might want to do is go in circle motions if you want to create that really fuzzy look. If you want to create sort of a sketchy look, you can go back and forth like this, but either way they're going to blend really nice. So now what you'll notice is I have this sort of layer of dust that's kind of getting in my way. I'm going to move these pastels over. So now what I'm going to do is to get this off the paper, I'm just going to tip my sketchbook and I'm going to tap it. So you don't have to tap really rough, you can just gently tap on the side. And do you see how I have this pile right here? You have a couple options. You can leave it till the end of class and then wipe it up, as long as you can be careful not to push your sketchbook over and get the rest of your sketchbook really messy or the back page. Or if you want to have a wet paper towel next to you while you're working, you can slowly wipe it up. But our goal is to keep this pastel dust on the table and then use a wet paper towel so when you're wiping it up, we can throw it right away. What we can't have is any of this pastel dust on the floor or any of it on the still life objects or the space around us. So we really have to make sure that we're careful. So I'm going to go back in with a little more white. I'm going to try to sort of use that circular motion more now so I can blend them. And then I'm also going to take this coral color again and go back over top of that middle color so I can start to blend them a little bit together. So now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to break this over a little bit, but I'm going to do it with the black. So now what this is creating is I sort of have my medium values to my light, and now I'm creating my dark values, my sort of dark grays or dark to middle values. Okay. So I'm going to do the same thing with this coral again. I really like to make sure that I'm blending that color in. So I'm going to go back over top of it. So I talked to you guys a little bit when I was teaching you about holding your pencil, and I said, how many of you have a really heavy hand? Meaning, how many of you really hold your pencil really tight? And I said, that is me. I definitely am the type of person that I get the bump on my finger. I hold my pencil as tight as possible. You'll be able, because pastels are so sensitive, you'll be able to see if you drew anything on this front page before, just like I did, you can see some of my still life or my value scale boxes. You can see that they're starting to show through because I draw so dark. So if you would like to kind of flip a few pages past in your sketchbook, so that way you have a nice blank page, if you're that type of neat person, then go ahead. But if this starts to show up, because pastels are so sensitive, I understand, don't worry about having these little lines in your drawing if you get them. As long as there aren't too many and it's not overly distracting. But something like this is totally okay. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to tap, and then that's all I have to do for my monochromatic. So as long as you're using the white, the black, and then whatever color you choose, you have that monochromatic value scale. So I'm going to ask that you do the same thing for the cool colors and the warm colors, except you're going to be using only blue, greens, and purples for the cool colors. So let's get those out. So these are the colors that you'll be able to use. You can even use if you want to mix in a lime green. These are the colors you can use here. And then for the warm colors, these will be the colors that you can use for the warm. If you even want to use a little bit of peach, you can. I do not want to see black and white in either of these two. This is only cool colors and only warm colors. We're not going to use any whites and blacks in any of these two. So what I'm going to do is just complete these for you. If you would like to pause the video, if this makes sense and you understand where you're going to go from here and here, you can do that. Or you can watch all the way through and you can watch me kind of fill these two in. But really, all you're going to do, we've got the monochromatic up here, and I showed you the 3 colors you're going to use. As long as you are using these colors for the cool box and these colors for the warm, you're just going to fill this in. The purpose of this activity is for you to get used to mixing the pastels. because when we start doing out the objects that are sitting in front of us, not only do we want to be selective about the colors we're using, but we also need to be able to mix the colors well so that they blend. Okay. So when I'm mixing my colors, I like to try and pick ones that are close in value to each other. So what that means is these two I can tell would blend because they're really similar colors. And whenever I blend, I like to go right over top of what's already there. And then I'll go out a little bit farther, but not too much. So then to me, these two might be next. So getting towards the end, you can be a little bit more creative than I am with this. I just am trying to get it done so that way you have an idea of what it's all going to look like in the end. But this is meant to be the fun part, and this is part of your sketchbook check. So the more creative you are, the more I will look at your effort, and the more you will, or the higher I should say you will score when I am doing the sketchbook checks. So I really like to look at creativity when I'm looking at your sketchbook.